So when I think of or thought of Islam, I usually associated that with one race, which would be from the Middle East. And that's something that I learned throughout this that isn't really that quite true. So going into some just basic definitions, I defined Islam, which is the religious faith of Muslims, including the belief in Allah as a sole deity and in Muhammad as his prophet. And then another definition that I thought would be important would be diversity, which is the condition of having or being composed of differing elements, variety, especially inclusion of different types of people, such as the people of different races or cultures in a group or organization. And then the last one that I thought was important is Muslim, which is just the followers of the faith of Islam. That's what you call it, and those were all found in Merriam-Webster. So moving into this is just going to be a little bit of background on the faith and some of their beliefs and important things. So that's the Kaaba, which is a cube-shaped stone structure that was built by the prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael. And they built it where the prophet Adam built a sanctuary to worship one God, and it's in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And it's the focal point for Muslims around the world that unify them in prayer and worship and symbolize their common belief in spiritual focus and direction. So they all focus on this cube as a main point of their prayer. They pray 5 times a day, and that's the focus of their prayer in those 5 times. And then moving on to the Hajj, which it's a pilgrimage that all followers of Islam are supposed to make in their lifetime at least once, and it's when they go to the Kaaba. So they make the pilgrimage to the Kaaba, and it's performed, like I said, it's performed to fulfill one of the pillars of Islam. And the kind of some background on this, the rituals of the Hajj commemorate the struggles of Abraham and his wife Hagar and their son Ishmael in surrendering their wills to God. So that was like that's what the journey is about, is thinking about those people. So finally moving on to the Nation of Islam. There's 2 different sections in this that I found on my website, which was facts about Islam. And the first thing is Islam, which they said is for all races, and it enjoins the worship of one unseen God who never took human form. So it's for all races, really focuses on everyone. And then the Nation of Islam is geared towards non-white people, and this teaches that God appeared as a man named Fard Muhammad, and Elijah Muhammad was a prophet that appeared as well. And according to the Orthodox Islam, that these are blasphemous beliefs, and they don't really go along with the Quran, which is their main book of belief. So the beliefs of the Nation of Islam don't really go along with the Quran and its teachings. And then some more diversity in Islam. The 2 main types of Islam are the Sunni and Shia. It's like the 2 branches within. And the Sunni, they're called this because they believe that the Sunnah is authoritative for Islam and accepts Quranic law. The government is based on application of the Sunnah. And then the Shia, the name comes from the phrase "party of Ali," who was Muhammad's successor, and it was in a different language, and I wasn't going to try and pronounce that. And I found that from Jenkins. And then moving on to the political divisions in the Sunni and Shia, which is a big thing that causes conflict between the two branches of Islam. And this goes along with the social and government systems that are found in various Muslim countries. So the Sunni, where they're located mainly, their military locations are in the Sudan and Libya. And then the royal aspect of it is in Arabia, Morocco, and Jordan. And then for the Shia, same thing, the royal part is in Iran, and then when the old Egypt dynasty and parts of Syria. And then their military was in the revolutionary Iran, when Iran was going through a lot of changes with their religion. So then Islam is for all people. So this is getting into more philosophical things on Islam. So all Muslims are not Arab, Middle Eastern, or African. Islam is a universal religion and a way of life that includes followers from all races. And Arabs only constitute about 20% of Islam, which I found pretty interesting when I looked it up and researched it. And the majority of the people that practice Islam are from Indonesia, Pakistan, and India. And that's about 550 million people roughly. And this was all found from the 30 Facts of Islam. And then I have a short video that kind of sums it all up and explains it a little bit better than I could, I think.
Then there are a couple of realizations that are very important. And those are that, we have to understand what time in history we live in. If I was giving this talk 50 years ago, maybe my content would have been different, based on the reality around us. And even though I'm not going to give you a comprehensive kind of social analysis of where Muslims stand, I do want to share some things with you. We are living in a time where there are so many different efforts, and there are so many different movements, and there are so many different labels, all under this big thing we call Islam. There are so many flavors of Islam. There are so many variations within Islam. To give you a personal example, my adult life began in New York City, and I spent most of my adult life actually in New York City. I only left New York about 5 years ago. And I was exposed to Islam at a serious level in New York. And depending on which masjid you go to, you'll get a different brand of Islam, completely different from the other. And you get exposed to very different ways of thinking about Islam. I'm not here to label groups or ideologies. And I'm not talking about outside of the mainstream fold. I'm talking about Sunni Islam, mainstream Islam. Within that, you have a lot of variety. You have a lot of variations. And as a young person, I was like a teen, you're very impressionable. So you get exposed to one and you're like, this must be the right one. Then you get exposed to the other and you say, well, maybe there's something wrong with that one. This must be the right one. And you keep kind of experimenting. It's this experimental experience that I at least had in my earlier youth, right? But at the end of it all, one thing became obvious. One thing became very clear to me. Islam and the struggle for Islam is not one thing. And it will never be owned by one group. It can't be. That time is over. That was the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Islam was one thing. It was one people. They had exactly the same understanding on every issue. And they represented Islam, and if there was a difference of opinion, they could take it back directly to the Prophet ﷺ, and he could answer them for them immediately in the flesh. We have the Quran and we have the Sunnah, yes. But have there been differences of interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah? Yes. Are there going to be intellectual, legitimate differences of opinion among us? Yes. Are there going to be different varieties of Muslims? Absolutely. Now, there's two attitudes we can take. One of the attitudes is the one that I'm holding on to is correct, and everybody else, not only are they wrong, they are deviant, corrupt, heading into the hellfire, stay away from them if you know what's good for you, etc., etc., etc. That's one attitude, and I've seen that attitude. I'm from New York after all. I've seen that attitude. Don't go there, they'll send you to hell. Don't listen to them, their Islam's corrupt. And the other, we have the right Islam. And the other one the same way. Everybody's proprietary, holding on to their variation of Islam as the right one. Everybody else says, I don't know what they're doing. But actually, at the end of the day, the more you mature in your knowledge of Islam, you realize that the struggle for Islam, the work for Islam, is not going to be owned by one group, one community, one individual, one school of thought. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's not practically possible. And if, recently, alhamdulillah, I had a chance to go to Hajj, as I mentioned before. You realize how much diversity there is in Islam when you're at Hajj. How widely different Muslims can be. You realize that, if not any place, then Hajj.
So I think he does a really good job at explaining not only the differences between the types of people that you'll find that practice Islam, but the different kinds of Islam, and kind of takes it from a modern spin, and kind of like how him being a teenager going from going to different, just at every place where he would practice it differently, and everyone has different ideas, and it shows that it's really more of like a a collective idea more than just like this is how it is, it's set. It's more open to interpretation, and I think that actually makes it pretty cool. And there are my references.